Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here. So Hoyoverse actually for the first time in many years put out a statement that they are actually planning to revisit old characters and even quote-unquote use the words strengthen them, which is crazy because we have always thought that our characters that we got will never be changed. But I guess if you increase multipliers, no one can say no, right? It's always a good thing. If you don't rework kits, you just increase the multipliers, you probably won't even get in trouble with a lot of rules and regulations as well. I think that is really smart of them. Quite fun. But let's just say we could adjust a bit of their kit to make them even better. In this video, I want to share with you my thoughts on 5 characters very likely to be strengthened by Hoyoverse based on their analysis. And I'll share with you my reason why, as well as how we plan to change it. We put this video out where we nerf and buff previously, but this time we're just going to be talking purely about buffing. The previous time was just like fantasy, what if we change things to balance it? But it's nice that Hoyoverse actually took the buff part about it when we put out that video like months ago to actually bring back a lot of old characters because a lot of people are upset about it. Now, first of all, I want to just share with you my thought process is that I don't think standard characters like Welt, like Clara, like Himiko, not that Himiko even needs a buff at all. I think she works really well. Bronya, Yanqing, unfortunately, any Yanqing mains out there hoping for the day he shines. I don't think standard characters are going to get buffed in Honkai Star Rail based on the strengthening. Because they're standard characters, it doesn't do much for their revenue at all. In fact, the stronger standard characters get, it kinda prevents them from earning more money in a sense because now you can't monetize a new character of that particular path of that particular element as well. So let's put the rule of thumb, the 5 characters on this list, none of them will be standard characters. I think the odds are a little bit lower. And in my opinion, I don't think they will strengthen every character one shot. They'll probably strengthen a few characters first before moving on and seeing how the community takes things, whether it actually increases their sales of those characters before buffing everything else. Because if you just do a holistic across the board buffing of characters, you will get a lot of meta disturbances. Some characters might become too broken and might actually break the game state and affect their sales in the long run. So 5 characters, and let's start off, of course, with the first character who is on the banner right now. I think that Silverwolf needs a buff, honestly, right now. Many characters in the game have already some sort of elemental weakness ignore, which is entirety of like Silverwolf kit. Akirion basically has colorless breaking with her out. You have characters like Fucc who also has that in a kit. You have characters like Firefly who inputs fire weakness. You have Boothill who basically like does a Silverwolf single target on his own, which means that Silverwolf is really delegated to the role of a debuffer as well as a defense shredder because now her weakness implanting ability in her skill doesn't really matter anymore. The simplest way to buff her, in my opinion, is make this such that you can select the element that you want to implant rather than it being like RNG based, and at the same time it's AoE. So AoE weakness implant, you can choose the element that you want to implant. I think that will make her back into the meta. She'll be really strong because then you can fit her into any other team composition. In fact, she will probably be one of the best characters in the game if you just make that change. Will Hoyoverse do it? Depends on how much they want to actually sell Silverwolf, because right now her kit is kinda a bit meh with all of the stuff that's going on in the game. That's my recommendation. Improving multipliers to turn her into a DPS simply will not work as well because there are many better single target damage dealers in the game, and you might as well play a Harmony rather than Silverwolf to a large extent. So you want her to give you that debuff capability to actually come in the game. I think they need an AoE Silverwolf. That would be really fantastic. And anyone who like skips Silverwolf will probably be like, sheesh, should I have said she's garbage? I think that is one of the possibilities. Hoyoverse has always made us like regret certain FOMO decisions. Like, I should have told it. I shouldn't have said this character was bad. If you haven't realized over the years of playing Hoyoverse games, they like to do that with all these unexpected twists and turns as well. So that's the first candidate I think that deserves a buff. And I think out of all of the supports, she's probably the weakest in the game right now. At this point, I want to point out, like on the flip side, one female character, the male character that I think is most likely to get a buff. Some of you are looking at a character, you have them in mind, maybe like Dr. Ratio. My thought process is probably going to be Imbibitor Lune. Now, he is very popular with a lot of players, maybe the female community, people who like male characters as well. Even the Chinese community like this character a lot. He was super popular as with Jingyuan. So naturally, I think that they will most likely want to buff Imbibitor Lune in one way or another so that they can appease a large part of their paying populations to support the game and represent a big part of the group already. How can you buff him, in my opinion? I think Imbibitor Lune is fixed with multipliers. Right now, his damage probably isn't as good as a lot of the other characters in the game, but they will probably want to keep his skill point sapping ability, use skill points to do damage, and in my opinion, the easiest way to fix Imbibitor Lune is just to increase the multipliers. Depending on how creative they want to be, they could make it such that instead of taking up 3 skill points, you could take up 4 skill points, 5 skill points to do even more damage to the multipliers. But this character, I think, functions very well. He is quite balanced in terms of the needs as well as his output. The only problem is because of the massive amount of HP power creep that has been going on, he just can't keep up with new DPSs. If you simply just increase multipliers, I think he's more or less like good to go. That is my honest opinion. The only other thing is maybe just increase the number of stages, like 4 or 5. But that means they have to do like animations, editing and stuff, which they might not be too interested for an old character to take that amount of risk. Depends on how much they want to do it, to be honest. But I think Imbibitor Lune is probably a numbers person. And as we are talking, feel free to like leave a comment below as well if you guys agree with my thoughts, you think that maybe they could do something else. For all you know, Hoyoverse, maybe one of their staff might be watching this video sometime and like reading through all our comments so to get feedback before they do the buffs, so it helps them like beta test their ideas and what the community exactly wants. So feel free to leave a comment below. It will really help, I think, the community as well to basically enjoy the game better. So 2 characters now, one Imbibitor Lune, one Silver Wolf. Let's go back to a female character. And this is personally my hope. Hoyoverse, if you're watching this, please buff Zila. I spent a lot of money on this character already. It's like freaking $2,000. But jokes aside, this character is very, very underwhelming. Right now in the game state, not only is Hunt not that great, but even the meta Hunt characters, arguably like now it's like maybe Fei Xiao and to some extent Boot Hill, who's currently on banner as well. Zila just doesn't do enough damage, and nowadays, even if you out the squishy, her special thing is she gets to go when you kill a target. But if you out the squishy and you can't kill the squishy, you're basically just useless, you can't do anything. And even with my Eidolon 6, she doesn't really do much. She has been warming my bench for 1 year, and she likely will continue warming the bench as well. She's basically like a gold bar that I can't give back and I can't get back, so it doesn't even appreciate with time. At this point, RIP my money, but how do I think that they can change it? Again, very similar to Imbibitor Lune, she probably is a multipliers thing. The reason why she's not very good now is because her damage just can't keep up with the HP that even the normal monster creeps come about. But her mechanic in the game state actually works really nicely. She does a lot of damage, she keeps attacking over and over again every time she kills a target. I think Hoyoverse needs to focus whether they want her to be a single target killer or a character, burping real quick, or a character that wants to kill off squishies, get buff, and then do more damage. So in a sense, one of the easiest ways is just removing this cap of when you kill one target, you can go again. And every time you kill a target, you just keep going again, making her a character that is like Hunt, but also Erudition-like, where you can actually in the same turn hit a lot of enemies. It might be a bit broken because if you have enough damage, you can burst down a lot of characters. If you remove this do not trigger again, I think you should not buff the multipliers because she'll be too OP. But if Hoyoverse wants to limit this and leave it here, again, why is it too OP? It's because if any other character relies on your character going again, and you don't have this, Zila basically becomes an infinite loop monster if in a like pure fiction game mode, which can create some serious problems, especially on a very well-built Zila that is like E6, S5, it breaks the game. So I don't think they should remove this, but it's one angle they could consider. The one that is more interesting is probably just going to be increasing her multipliers. Her out does nothing now. 459% is like ant scratching people at this point when your Hertha is doing millions of damage, 200 with her follow-up shots, and that smash thing, and like Akirion doing a million damage. 459% when I see that 100k damage nowadays, 200k, is like basically a basic attack from one of the other characters. Zila is definitely a multipliers problem, but that's how I probably will fix her. Definitely a character that's in need of a buff. Again, please Hoyoverse, at this point, this is not one of my characters on the list. He doesn't need another buff. He has been very, very fine. He's been getting buffs non-stop. But hey, it's Hoyoverse, man. If I were to guess, he's not in my list, but one of the runner-ups is probably Xingyuan is probably going to get a buff. They'll buff him at any occasion, any time in mind, they will probably buff this character. The last two of my characters on my list are generally older characters. I looked at the entire list and most of them are actually quite playable because they are either newer characters or they are still having a place in the meta. Even for example, like Luota is still functioning, he's still quite well. Black Swan is basically whether pure fiction niche is there or not. The last two characters on my list, let's start off first with a male character, is going to be Blade. Now, Blade, you might say, oh, because HP sapping is not meta, it's not in the game state. But even if you have a HP sapping meta of like Jade came back in a little bit, right? A Blade just simply doesn't function because he doesn't do any damage at all as a secondary DPS, and the scaling from him is so poor. The only way you can make Blade come back into the meta is if you specifically give buff in the game modes for losing HP and doing damage based on lost HP. Otherwise, it's absolutely atrocious. For Blade's case, I think the best way to buff this character is he needs a little bit of a multiplier increase or more HP supports coming into the game to buff him. But then again, it's a lot of stuff given to one characters. So how Hoyoverse might fix these characters is to upgrade his Eidolons. Because if you think about this at this point of time, people that have the base copy, you want them to spend more money. You don't just want them to buff, like, you don't want to just buff their base kit and they don't pull for Eidolons. So you want to make their Eidolons way, way stronger so that you might incentivize people for going multiple copies, like first copy, second copy and stuff. Currently, his Eidolons are absolutely garbage. Like, no one will ever pull for them. Like, this is like a slight damage increase. This is like crit rate increase. So they can do a lot more. Like, maybe add additional damage to these lines, add additional damage to these lines. In that sense, you can possibly bring Blade back in, especially if you have other HP sapping characters like Jing Liu Revival kind of thing. Blade actually functions quite well. He's a very solid character. Just his damage can't keep up. He's a very well-balanced character that can fit into most teams when he can do damage. But right now, he doesn't do damage even in the right conditions. And that is, I think, the biggest problem with Blade. How to fix Blade? Either multiplier increase or upgrade his Eidolons. I think upgrading the Eidolons makes a lot of sense because Blade is actually a well-balanced character at E0, just that he does not enough damage nowadays. That is my fourth character. And the last pick, I'm going with a popular character who is, although not the most nerfed, I think it's a character that will probably help sell very well. It's an older character. And at this point, of course, if you guys have your thoughts, leave me in the comments below your top 5 that is most likely, and give some explanation in case anyone else is also reading the comments and giving feedback to Hoyoverse development team as well, so they can see a perspective from the international community as well, not just maybe representatives from mainland Chinese or mainland Japanese and stuff like that. We want to give them a broader perspective when they are deciding what heroes strengthen. My top pick and my last pick rather is going to be Kafka. Picking a popular character that is slightly old already in terms of not her age, but in terms of how long she's been out, is going to do a lot of wonders for sales, and she will spark in a revival for DOT characters. Kafka is by no means weak, she still functions very well. It's just that her damage nowadays is no longer a DPS character. She really is becoming like a DOT debuff proc to help other characters get the debuff, and when DOT comes in, she's still very proper. But you could easily change this character out very nicely. And the simplest way, I think one of the things that you can think about is remove this follow-up trigger one time per turn. Maybe make this slightly more. Maybe make it such that her shock can stack even more. Instead of like one stack, you can make shock stack 5 times, 10 times, different abilities, stack like different shock and stuff like that. I think that is one way that you can make her really strong. Otherwise, Kafka is actually still quite good in the meta, but if you buff a character that's popular out of all of them, and she is justifiable for a buff because she's one of the older characters in the game, arguably one of the ones that are withstanding the test of time better, like Jing Yuan, for example, and Luo Ta. I think that Kafka deserves a nice buff. It's a bit tricky because you don't want to make her too OP. DOT is strong, but you don't want it to be too relevant as well, so that you can have a good balance out of all of them. A strong DOT team might actually break the game overall because they can be played into break teams and to many teams. Maybe for all you know, you can give her some sort of break mechanic so that she can play in super break teams. Maybe that will bring her back much more into the meta already. She's lightning as well, so she has tons of competition, so it doesn't really matter whether she like competes heavily, because you will have a lot of competition anyway from like Akirion, for example, like Aglia, and many other characters in the game who are already lightning element. So buffing Kafka, I don't think is a big problem in the grand scheme of things. But that is just my thoughts on the top 5 characters that need to be buffed and likely might get buffs. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts as well, and if you agree to my list. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys in the next video.